Hello, I'm Allison, and welcome to another episode of Listen Now, Read Later, the podcast that leads you to your next favorite novel by reading you short stories. Except this week we have a fun twist in that we are having a book club episode. So our plan is to do this every 5 episodes hereabout. And this is just going to be a chance for you to get to hear our team talking about what's gone into our book recommendations, our story selections, and, just have the fun, chaotic experience of being one of the three Thesauri. So here with me, we've got Teresa Meyer. You're used to hearing her book recommendations at the end of our episodes, and Megan Cromer, who runs our Instagram and makes all the lovely graphics you see and everything like that. So, yeah. Hi, guys.
Here we are. We made it. We're doing it.
We're doing it. So this has been, what, a year in the making? Is it last summer that
We're pretty close at this
came
point.
to you guys? Yeah.
I think it was August, right before you left for school.
Yeah, I think you're right. It was like right before school.
Yeah.
Oh, man. And yeah, because I just remember that we met at Tropical Smoothie Cafe.
That's what we did. Yes, we did.
But for those of you who have been listening, I think Teresa mentions in one of the episodes that we took a podcasting class together.
Well, some of us did. I preloaded on that class. But yes, we did.
That's true. I was explaining the other day. So our high school had this schedule that had breaks in the middle of the day. It was like supposed to simulate college. And so I was trying to explain that to somebody who was asking me about that class the other day. I was like, so we had people who weren't enrolled but just didn't have class during that time who were kind of on the roster.
We would go work on it like in other places.
Yeah.
And
just find an
go to
classroom.
Department
class. Got so many old good video clips from that time period too.
Really so true.
That was a great class.
Well, and for those who are curious, I mean, it's still on Apple Podcasts. Shout out to Everything Connects, Southpod's podcast. We made 5 episodes in an entire semester.
They were quality.
They were quality.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, this left us with this knowledge of, GarageBand and different techniques. And I don't know, I just kept coming back to the idea that it'd be fun to do it again. So, hence, we are here. And we have been doing the crazy...
You assembled the team. We had to combine our efforts.
Yeah.
Combine our talents.
Which the joke of the 3 Thesauri comes back to, I think, those classrooms making Everything Connects. I think that's where we came up with that.
Yeah, because we'd be looking for a different word.
Yes.
Or you would, or I would.
I'd be sitting in my on my iPad in the back working on homework. You'd be like, what's another word for this? And that's where I contributed.
A bunch of
Teresa was our original Thesauri.
A bunch of thesauruses.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that was such a fun time. And now, I had been keeping this list through my MFA of they make us read so many short stories, which has never been I am learning being in the writer community that some people pick up short story collections in bookstores, and that was never something that was taught to me to do. I always was novels. So I've been keeping this list of ones where I was like, oh, these are really fun. These are really good. And Teresa reads 100 books a year. And then Megan got a graphic design degree. And somehow we had the dream team all of a sudden.
Dream team. And now we've got 4 completed episodes.
I know.
All come together.
Just so crazy.
It is.
I can't. You said it's been a year in the making almost, and I can't believe it.
No, but I mean, we emailed so many authors for permissions, because we wanted to make sure it was feasible. So we had to get that copyright permission, which it's been so fun emailing these writers and then just dropping that into conversation in my classes, because I'm taking these MFA classes, and so people will be like, wait, you have an email from that person? I'm like, yeah, I do.
I love that.
It's a great time, but it's been great, the support. And I'm excited that like now they're getting to see what they said yes to. Because I'm sure some of them started to think this is never happening.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, it's been cool to like write things again because teaching now I don't write a whole lot for myself anymore. I'm trying to help 12-year-olds write instead. And so it's been fun to like, even it's not like fiction, it's just kind of a scripted stuff. But I've really enjoyed it, like putting together some writing for myself again. It's been great.
I love that.
I really loved, like, I feel like this has helped motivate me to keep reading because I used to read like so much in high school and even middle school. Like I was reading like crazy. But in college I got so busy and my degree was not a fiction heavy degree. But
well, even like I remember hearing jokes in college that like you never read less than when you're an English major. I mean, like no matter what your degree is, it's so hard to keep it up.
Absolutely.
Balancing my English, like my Brit Lit classes with my like adolescent lit classes though, like I would just like I'd skip Paradise Lost so I could read like
that's fair.
The Fault in Our Stars. Yeah. And it was for class. So yeah.
Yeah. I think my favorite textbook that I read for my degree was called How to Make a Video That Doesn't Suck. It was a really good book, actually.
That reminds me of our stats textbook.
Yeah, it was very much like our stats textbook, and like it would make jokes and stuff like that, except it was in the actual text. I feel like the stats textbook, it was always in like these weird footnotes. It's just really funny.
Yeah, when we took AP stats together, they got a new textbook to like that was just for AP stats, and our stats teacher was like, this book is so cool, and here's why. There are jokes in the footnotes, and they were kind of like they were such nerdy jokes, but they were nerdy.
Yeah. No, it was a good class. But yeah, I just really like that this podcast has become like a space to like discuss books and things like that. I feel like that always motivates me to read different things and new things because it's fun to talk about them, and I hope it's people to hear us talk about them because it's fun doing it.
Well, I agree. And for those, like, we're gonna get into stuff about the different episodes, but like for those wondering how we come up with book recommendations, more than once the three of us have been sitting here like scrolling through the Goodreads app, just looking at the books we've marked read. And it's been so fun remembering books that I haven't thought about in a while. And just it's fun remembering all the great stories that are out there.
So many good ones.
A lot of good recommendations from you guys too. I love hearing what you guys have been reading.
When
I do go on Goodreads, I love seeing like scrolling on the feed to see like what Allison's reading, what Teresa's reading.
My Goodreads has become so much more social.
You always give reviews, Teresa, so it's like
I know.
I love Teresa's
being
reviews.
like, okay, what did Teresa think? This helps me determine if I'm gonna read this one soon or like.
I was in Barnes & Noble one time and I was like, let me look at the reviews on this book before I buy it, and I saw Teresa's 5-star review and I said, I'm buying it.
Yes, I love that.
It's rare to get a Teresa 5-star review,
right?
I go 4 on most of them. If it's gotta be big, if it's going to be 5 stars, which actually the book I just read was that. So very exciting. It's got to wow me. It's got to be like a life changer, you know?
Critic.
I am afraid to rate books because I'm afraid to commit to that rating. Because right after you read a book, sometimes you're on like a high.
Yeah.
And I'm like, about it. What if in a week I'm like, that was not a 5-star read?
That's fair. Every once in a while, I will be on Goodreads and I'll see a book that I've read a while back and be like, wait, I gave it that rating? like a time capsule.
But, I think it's also valid to rate books based on how much you enjoyed them. Sometimes it's not based on the quality.
This is so
true.
I feel that way about movies.
But for this podcast, we've got quality and enjoyment for these
This is
books that we
true.
picked
This
out.
is
We
true.
really
Let
do.
there be no
They have to be
mistake.
both.
We
Yes.
have been so picky.
We have
Yes.
high standards for this.
Yeah. Well, and
We
that
do.
like goes to, so for the first episode, we ended up with Mexican Gothic.
Mhm.
But we almost recommended Everything by Nicola
We
Yoon.
did. We
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
There's some similarities there, like
are. Which you wouldn't
because of
expect
the
if you're like
yeah.
just thinking about it.
But the whole like,
Mhm.
secluded daughter, and,
Mhm.
questionable parent, that's definitely the overlap.
Mysterious illness and yeah.
Mhm.
Well, and
Mhm.
I am a sucker for multimodality in books, like the text messages and the
Yes. Oh
hand-drawn
my gosh.
stuff. That was, I think, the first book I read that had that, and I love it. Like if someone tells me a book has that anymore, I'm just like, yes. But I always think about that book as such a good example. I mean, like look at this. Look at this.
So
I
cool.
do
It's
love
beautiful. It was
I
so
love artwork
fun.
in books. Maybe I'm biased, but
And
I
like
love that book is so short and sweet. Like just like
the movie
perfect.
was really well done too. I remember going to see that in theaters when it came
I
out.
never saw that.
Oh, it's good.
Didn't they make
It's
one
good.
where the sun is also a star too?
Did
Yes,
they?
I've seen that one too. It's very
Oh,
cute
yeah.
also.
I need to watch
Mhm.
this.
I know. I need
Throwback.
now that like streaming platforms are making book adaptation movies, I can't keep up with them all. Like I think
Yeah.
they've been out of All the Bright Places too, and I loved that book, but I haven't seen the movie.
I
Yeah.
did not like that book and I did not like
No?
that movie. But that's that's me personally.
I mean I have no idea. I know like I mean that comes from there was a phase of YA literature, for those who don't remember, that everything was about mental health and suicidal teenagers. And I mean I have to like whenever there's a book from that phase, I feel like I have to admit that I don't know how I'd read it today. But I
Yeah.
know back
Like
then it was
I
mind-blowing.
read 13 Reasons Why like
I've
when I was a freshman and I loved it then. I feel like I'd have different thoughts now.
Yeah. It was like the fact that like suicide in books was a trend is an
Yeah.
interesting
You're looking
choice
back.
that we made in the late 2010s.
Well, I always appreciate like a good message.
Yeah.
But I think it's very hard to walk that line of like raising awareness and romanticizing things to teenagers who romanticize things very easily.
Yeah.
And that's the critique I've heard of those books a lot. Again, it's been so long since I've read them. I don't know where I
Right.
stand on it because
And
I
that's
read
the
them
thing
when I
is
was
like, I mean, we were reading them when we were in the targeted age group.
Right.
So like it's very interesting because like that trend seems like it's mostly gone away. I don't feel like I hear about books coming out like that anymore. So I haven't read any YA books on those topics as an adult. Like I was reading those in middle school or early high school.
Yeah.
Which is always interesting to think about the things that you were reading as a child. But
Yeah.
now it's like
I can't believe 8th grade me, her favorite book was The Book Thief. I'm like, oh my gosh,
Great
so
choice.
heavy. It's
Honestly.
a fantastic book.
it's
Good
actually
quality.
So heavy. But it was so good.
I just always think about the fact that like I was what 12 at the most when my school assigned the Hunger Games. And like it was life changing. Like I loved it. And now I'm like writing dystopian fiction and trying to make it a career. But it's like I look back now and I'm like, there's no swear words, there's no sex. Like it didn't like go against the rules that had been laid out for me.
No.
But no one like had set out the line of like, don't read books about kids killing kids. Like that wasn't a parameter.
I also think reading those books when you're older, you kind of see
It's
the
so
layers
different.
of it a little more. Because when you're a kid, I think you see, what you can understand from a kid's perspective. And then it feels heavier when you're an adult and fully understanding like
Also,
all of the weight.
I agree. And also, I mean, I was watching the movies recently and like when I was reading those books, Katniss being 16, that was a big kid. That was someone older.
Yes.
That was someone more mature. That was someone who could drive. Like, so like yes, she's still a kid, but it was that like, ooh, the cool high schooler is like
Yeah.
going on a tough journey. It wasn't like
Mhm.
government is killing teenagers
Right.
in the way that it feels when you're an adult, which is really like
Yeah.
interesting about literature. And also like I will never stop saying that that series is like amazingly crafted. And
Hmm.
I mean,
So
read
It
good.
is. I think what I reread The Hunger Games during COVID, I think, and I think the biggest thing I took away was like this one holds up. Like there was a lot of trendy dystopians of the time, but The Hunger Games holds up as like literature. Like that
yes,
was a
yeah,
great book, great series.
I've read that Suzanne Collins is very particular about she writes when she has something to say.
wow,
And if she doesn't have something to say, she doesn't write it. Or she might write it, but not publish it, I'm assuming.
yeah.
Uh,
I read an interview where she said that in the back of my copy of Ballad and Songbirds and Snakes, because a lot
yeah.
of people were saying, like, why this prequel?
Mhm.
And she had like this whole thing of like I mean, she's talking about like Enlightenment philosophy and like all this. I mean, her brain is on another level. Her brain's
I
on another level.
love her.
Yes.
And
Very
like,
cool.
which is so funny because I read The Hunger Games for the first time this past fall, winter. Um,
Amazing.
insane. They're so insanely good, and I kind of loved reading them for the first time as an adult
Yeah.
because I don't know, I had this perception of what The Hunger Games was from like, the movie trailers and the all that stuff.
You
And
hadn't seen the movies either?
no, I hadn't seen it because I wanted to read the books
No
first.
spoilers. That's great.
When I I'm an avid books first person.
Yeah.
Um, and in middle school when they were coming out and everyone was loving them, the concept terrified me.
Mm.
And then I just got stubborn because whenever you tell someone that you haven't read something like The Hunger Games, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you have to read The Hunger Games." So I'm like, "Well, you want to not now. I want to read it when I want to read it."
Yeah.
Yep.
But
I get that.
I'm really glad that I read them at this stage of my life just because I don't know, there was a lot of depth there, and I loved reading them at the time that Ballad was coming out too with the movie. Just because it meant there was a lot of online
Yeah.
discussion and stuff like there
Yeah.
would have been back in the day. So
Right.
still got to see different opinions.
Yeah. I going
Mhm.
to Ballad in the theaters was such a like, I don't know, like cognitive dissonance moment for me because like I said, we were assigned Hunger Games. So I don't know, like you talk about like knowing the premise. Like I don't know. I mean, back then I almost only read historical fiction. So like it's interesting to think about, is there another way I would have even found that
Yeah.
book? Um that like so changed my reading habits forever. But I I waited in line at those movies. I went to midnight premieres for those movies. I mean, my mom was being dragged along to all of this because you know, I as well. I was like ready to like go to bat for why I should be allowed to see these PG-13 movies. So it was just really weird going to Ballad because like
Mhm.
there's no waiting in line anymore. That's not a thing in the theaters. Like they had
No.
like the elastic things set up and like we would sit there for like 2 hours to
Dang.
try to get a good seat and to be able to all sit together because of course I'm with my friends, we all have our moms, and so just being able to like walk in and then like the theater's not even necessarily full because it's not a 12, it's not a midnight premiere because that's no longer feasible, and it was just
Wild.
crazy. It was so weird, but the movie was so good.
That's such
um,
a cool part of like, yeah, book history you got to participate in though.
Yeah.
So fun.
it made me miss the waiting in line. Like a part of me was like, we should still do this for major events. Like it was such a
Maybe
part of the event.
maybe they'll do that for like the Emily Henry movies when they come out.
I
It'll
will
be
wait in line
I will wait in
for
line.
each read the movie.
I'm
I
so
love that.
excited. I love when books I already love get turned into movies because I'm like, oh, I knew that was good. Now everyone else will too.
Definitely.
Agreed. Agreed. Yeah. So we've been talking about all these books that we love. And of course, one of the books we love is Shadows Between Us by Trisha Levenseller. And a spin-off of that book is coming out next month, on the 9th, about, so if you remember from the beginning of the book, she has a sister who we don't see much when she goes and, is like, I'm going to get the king. But it sounds like it's going to be the sister's story. So it should be
two ambitious sisters. One of the things that drew me to it was originally it was a standalone, and it's like everything you want in like kind of a dark fantasy YA that's just one book. It's everything.
Right.
And it was
never get one book in that genre.
I think this was a COVID read. I was like, just blowing through books in COVID. I was like listening to 2 books a day, and that was one I picked up, and it was really good. I could not put it down.
Oh my gosh, I love that you were reading that much in COVID. I wanted an arts and crafts project during COVID, so I found, did you guys as a kids have those pot holder kits?
Mm-hmm.
Ah,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
I was cleaning out my room and I found that, and so I just went through all that I had left from childhood and gave like every woman I knew pot holders during lockdown.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
Because I was like, I can do this while watching TV. It gives my hands something.
I watched a lot of TV during COVID, but yeah, for the most part, I was like playing mindless games on my phone while I listened to books.
Yeah.
And a great time. Technically that was the only year I've read 100 books in a year.
I love that. I got into embroidery a couple of months before, ironically, and then March came around, and so did a million other people, and I was like ahead of the trend.
You were a trendsetter in that.
I love that.
Because I had surgery and was stuck at home.
I found out about Shadows Between Us because Trisha Levenseller came and gave a masterclass at my undergrad.
So cool.
And the things that made me want to read it were she made 2 comments about the book during that class. One was she said it was a Slytherin romance, which like I'm not even a Harry Potter girl, but I was like, okay, I need to know more.
Yeah.
And then the other thing was she was giving us like writing advice, and she was like, so you've got a scene where like you need an info dump, but you know that it's not good to do just a plain info dump. Not a problem. What can you do to make it more interesting? And she was like, in my recent book, I was like, what if they were naked? So like I pick up this book and the whole time I'm like, okay, so at some point there's going to be political info dump while naked, and I need to know how. They end up like, they're like swimming in a pool or something. But like the whole time I'm like picturing a conference room and like people are just naked. So I was like, I need to know how we get to this scenario. But I think about that a lot when I'm writing. I'm like, what is this book's version of they could be naked? Like,
funny.
That's creative. It's a fun bit of writing advice.
Yes.
I really liked what I like about episode 2 was just being introduced to the short stories, because I thought they were just like, first of all, they were so different even than any like short stories I've read written by women in the past, because like a lot of short stories written by women aren't like fantastic, but they're like very serious and dark because being a woman is scary. I get that part. But these ones were like lighthearted and quirky and just like so fun, but in the weirdest way. And I thought that was it was a great time. So I'm so glad that I got to read those for this episode.
I agree. Exactly.
Yeah, Amy Bender's collection was recommended by my professors, and it's unlike anything else. I mean, she's such a unique voice. But I love that even though she's so indescribably unique, we were like, yes, we can tie this to something.
Yes.
I feel like it like proved our hypothesis for this podcast.
And I was about to say everything connects. That is not this podcast, but it does.
Still relevant.
Everything.
Still relevant.
Yes. Well, and we had more amazing short stories by women in episode 3, which both episode 2 and 3 are short stories were by women and our book recommendations. were by
Mm,
women,
yeah.
which is fun. Episode
I rem-
3 was another place where Teresa and I, with the recommendation, we had different opinions on a book
yeah.
because
I think we were reading a couple different things to decide what to recommend there. And I picked up one book and stopped reading it. And then I can't remember, I don't remember if I had a recommendation that we were thinking about, but then Megan was like, what about this book I've read in 5 years?
yeah.
And I looked it up and it sounded interesting because it really looks, when you look at the cover and you look at like the reviews, and Rebecca Searle, she's like,
Mhm.
an author you find in the airport,
Yeah.
like in the airport store,
I
because
literally bought
she's
it at
very
Target.
popular.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like a very popular author. So
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I think I know what I'm getting into. And then I read it and it was like, it was heartbreaking and it was beautiful and it was also joyful. And I couldn't stop reading it. I listened to that one on my drive to school. But the problem with listening to books on the way to school is when I get to school, I have to stop listening to the book. And that's the worst. But I really loved that book, and it was so perfect to recommend with these stories
Oh,
too.
it was a
I'm
perfect
so glad.
recommendation. Well, and
I'm so
you guys were talking about it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit down and read it too. And every theory I had while reading that book was wrong.
right.
Every theory.
It's nothing like you expect.
No, and it's been so long. I mean, like, I've spent the last 3 years studying story structure. It's been so long since a book has completely fooled me and
Mhm.
sent me in such a different direction than I thought I was going to be in.
I
And
have those thoughts a lot too. Just like I've read so many books, how can they do
right,
something different? But
right.
they
Yeah.
do.
And I remember I came home one night. I don't know if I'd had a class or what, and I was so tired. And I was like, I'm gonna go to bed early. I just want to read a little bit before bed, which I should not do. I know that I cannot read before bed.
Famous last words.
And I don't remember what part of the book I was at. It might have been, we don't want spoilers, but it might have been when a certain diagnosis happens.
Mm.
But anyway, I was up till like 2 a.m. I sat there for like 5 hours and finished the book because I was like, I can't look away. I can't
Right.
look away.
Yeah.
It
I
was
feel like
so
I read
good.
that book maybe not in like one sitting, but in like maybe 48 hours of like
such a good lake.
it was a weekend or like I was on vacation or something. I just remember sitting outside and just like it was so good. And I love that even though it is a twist ending, it's not like, haha, gotcha. It's like a really meaningful,
Right.
Yeah.
a
In my
meaningful
Goodreads
twist on what you
review,
think.
oh my goodness. I just like, as soon as I finished it, I was like, they're talking to the girls who think they're the main character, like that's what I loved about it. I just like,
Mhm.
yeah, I
You
loved.
was it one of you guys or did I see I might have seen this in a Goodreads review, so I don't remember, but I feel like one of you guys called it like a love story that you don't expect.
Yeah, where did
Something
I
like
get
that.
that quote from?
It
Because I
is.
was using that quote, but I feel like I
Yeah.
gotta look at my copy. It was like from somewhere. I didn't coin it.
Because it is a love story, but not the one that you think it's going to be.
Yeah,
Right.
and I highlight that too in the recommendation in episode 2, just like,
Yeah, okay, maybe that's where I remember it.
Maybe
yeah.
Teresa came up with it
I
then.
don't know if I
I
came up with it.
stole
I
it.
won't claim that,
But
but
it's true. It's very true.
It was,
yes.
yeah, it's a perfect description. And yeah, I couldn't remember if it was like um in one of the reviews. But yeah, and I also, how often do you get such a great book that is what? It is 250 pages.
Yeah.
Um, like
Just
I
so great.
need these sometimes, you know. But
Grief.
yeah, we had really fun themes of like family and sisterhood running
Hmm.
through these 4 episodes.
Yes.
That they were also so fun to talk to with
Yeah.
people who have been like we've been in each other's lives for so long.
Hmm.
Like we're the kind of friends where it's like I know your siblings and I
Mhm.
know your parents and you know mine and like it's just really fun.
Yeah. It was a really great episode to kind of just like celebrate our friendship and stuff, and I
Yeah.
loved that part of it too. Yeah.
I love that I think it was that episode specifically that really centered on like female friendship,
Yeah, the third episode. Yeah.
which is really fun
Yep.
to highlight. I feel like that's not always like a central part of books. A lot of times it's part of a book. But I really love that we got to talk through a bunch of books that matched that short story, and that was like a driving part of the plot.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
For sure. Well, and
And then
what? Go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then we like totally flipped it to go to Hemingway because there's one writer that doesn't write about a female friendship. It's Hemingway.
Yeah. I think when I was getting voices for the Hemingway podcast, I was like, oh yeah, usually if there's like a short female part, I'm like, I'm just gonna read it myself. I don't need to like disrupt someone's day. And I was convinced I only needed one woman. But there are two in that last story. There's a
Two
waitress.
whole women.
Two whole women who get speaking parts. So I had to like meet up with Megan and like take a voice memo of her just saying like 4 sentences.
The waitress lines.
I tried to change my voice and I am not a voice actress. It was gonna sound really bad.
Well, I appreciate you coaching me on Spanish pronunciation as someone who
that was important.
Well, and what's funny is like if I would have caught it, I would have just been the waitress because I would have been like, I can say Spanish.
That would have been easier.
Fine. But I had already read all of this other part, which we're talking about Hills Like White Elephants, and that story out loud does something to you. I mean, that's such reading that woman's experience out loud. I mean, that story always gets taught as like the iceberg thing where like so much is unsaid and you realize it when you're reading it, but reading it out loud, it was just like, this is heartbreaking. This is heartbreaking.
I feel like the subtext comes through a lot stronger when you hear the words that are said.
Oh, probably. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like, because I was like recording with another person, so like looking at someone as they said those words to me, even though like they weren't saying them to me, like it was.
Yeah. I hope the experience listening to our podcast for that is like almost like overhearing it, like you're sitting next to them or something, because I feel like that would be kind of a fascinating way to experience that story.
I like that idea that like we're giving you a eavesdropping kind of.
Yeah. For the nosy ones, no.
Someone who has eavesdropped.
Right. I was like,
plenty coffee shops.
We are definitely not the nosy ones in this group. No.
What? No.
No.
The ones who have stories, we would never be looking for the drama. No, what do you mean?
Well, and then that book, that's when we did Long Way Down.
Yeah.
And that's such a gut punch.
Yes, it is. And I read that. That was a book I read last summer by the pool, which was an interesting by the pool read because I'm sitting here realizing the reveal, I'm sure, happens for smarter people sooner than it did for me. I think it took a couple floors for me to realize what was going on. But it dawned on me like kind of the secret of that book. And I was sitting by the pool and I was just like, whoa, like this is very impactful. And it is like what's left unsaid, and that's why we connected the two with Hemingway and Long Way Down. But it's a really good like moment to be in when you realize.
Yeah. Well, and the author reads the audiobook of that one.
That's so cool.
And so it's only like an hour or something like that. It's a short audiobook. So I read that through that way. I listened to it while I was driving, and having somebody who, like, since it's a novel in verse, having somebody who had chosen each of those words with purpose, say them with that intention, was really powerful for an already powerful book. And they made they made a graphic novel out of that, didn't they?
Yeah,
You
they
looked at
did.
that at all? I'm really curious.
I haven't. It's harder. I liked my middle schoolers liked novels in verse because they're short. And so I do like the crossover by Kwame Alexander and also his other book, Booked. And then the graphic novel versions of those. I recommend those to kids all the time because they're about sports, but the language in them is top tier, like language. The words he uses
Cool.
and the way he uses them, they're so good. So I love to recommend them. But this one's a little trickier to recommend because not all of my middle schoolers are emotionally intelligent enough, I think, to read Long Way Down, just because, like, I think they might eat, I think all of them might take something from it, but it's, it's a very different story. It's a very different theme. It deals with very different situations than, like playing basketball or playing soccer. So it's hard to recommend, and I haven't sought out the graphic novel for that one because of what it covers. I think I have it in my library, and I just, yeah, I haven't brought it up as much. It's not as easy to recommend, but it's still so good. So maybe I should bring it up more.
Well,
Recommend it to the ones who love The Book Thief, like middle school Megan did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it's
Yeah,
also like,
for sure.
I mean, we were talking about like Hunger Games and stuff, and that's got a 16-year-old protagonist. This has what, a 14-year-old
Yeah,
protagonist? So like
he's really young.
it's on the young end of YA, but it's not thematically on the young end of YA, which is
Right.
really interesting.
Yeah.
It also adds to the effect.
Yeah. So I would be really interested to see the graphic novel version. I bet it's like beautiful.
That'd be really cool.
I feel like that's how I heard about it first, because I remember that being in bookstores. I remember seeing that in Barnes and Noble. But then I found out that it like was originally not a graphic novel.
I think I picked up the book. I think that was when I thrifted. I definitely got it used. So find it around. I think I've heard of schools teaching that one too, which makes sense. It would be a good one to teach.
Yeah.
It'd be fun.
Very well done.
I'll keep that one in mind as I rotate my selections.
Yeah.
But we went through a lot of choices for this episode too of what we were going to recommend. Because one of the fun parts of recommending a book is we have to choose like what part of the stories we want to connect to a novel. So we went through Divine Rivals.
Yeah.
One of my favorite books basically ever. I have been reading Rebecca Ross's books since her very first one, The Queen's Rising, which is a great book because all of her books are so good. They're so great. And so when Divine Rivals came out, I like had it delivered to me the day it came out because I read all of her books. And I read it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. This is such a good book. I love it so much. And then it blew up on the internet and everyone was reading it. And it made me so, so happy when she posted that she was a #1 New York Times bestseller. And this is like her 7th book or something like that. And I was just like, she deserves this. This is amazing. And so I could talk about Divine Rivals all day. But our only connection for that one was really like the letter writing during the war in one of Hemingway's books.
Right.
So
yeah.
But
well, I had just reread Slaughterhouse-Five. So I think we brought that one up because that's Hemingway's always, they're talking about his language and like it's like, well, there's a lot to talk about with the language with Slaughterhouse-Five and lots of like male dynamics, which we do get some of the like male friendship in Hemingway's stories. But I feel like we really found a great middle ground in Long Way Down. And I think that kind of like with Amy Bender, Hemingway has such a specific style that I feel like that was part of what presented the challenge. But also made it fun to find something that we were like, yes, we can find something.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm happy with what we decide on how we connected it because it's also fun to like you know, for Rappaccini's daughter to Mexican Gothic, that was pretty literal, right? Like
Mhm.
weird Gothic plants and
Right.
two weird Gothic plants modern day. Well, not modern day, but like modern day novel. And then like Shadows Between Us was like interesting women to interesting women, you know, like unique women protagonists. And then we went from like pretty episode 3 pretty literal, right? Like
Mhm.
female friendships and also grief and stuff, to female friendships and grief in 5 years. But this one was like more on the structure of the stories, which was
Yeah.
Right.
cool to talk about and
It was a different look.
connect. Yeah.
No, I like that. Well, and thinking about, you talked about how Mexican Gothic to Rappaccini's daughter can come across so literal, but I was
Mhm.
like, I pulled up my calculator, and so that's our biggest time jump for these 4 episodes. That's an 176-year time jump where we are seeing stories that like we can say like, oh, clearly, and like who knows if Sylvia Moreno Garcia thought about that story. There's plenty of Gothic stories to look at. I mean, even with Rappaccini's daughter, there's like, can you go back all the way to like Adam and Eve? Like, but it's just so cool being like, oh
Mhm.
yeah, these things get recycled, but also they stay fresh. Like they hold up. I don't know. I just love that.
I love that
Yeah,
too.
I think that's why we were talking about before we started recording how um I'm a themes English teacher versus like a symbolism English teacher. Like I've never really connected with the picking out. I can pick out a symbol and I can talk about a symbol, but I'm love much more picking out themes and talking about themes because
Mhm.
um we see I love that themes are universal. I love that themes like any story you read has to be written to be impactful in a way that you connect with it, no matter if it's a fantasy or a sci-fi or a contemporary or a romance, right? There's always things that are meant for the audience to connect to. And I love that we're using those connections to connect short stories to novels because um, it's really fun to pick those out and like you said, connect over time and space and stuff
Mhm.
too. It's so interesting. It's such a cool thing that we participate in when we tell stories like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's
Yeah.
my favorite thing that we do as part of this podcast is talk about like different themes that connect. Maybe do we want to draw on this theme in the short story and connect it to this book, or do we want to pick out this theme in this short story and connect it to this other totally completely different book, but they both somehow connect back because of something that's, interwoven into the story. Or like you talked about, we've based it on, very literal things, or we've based it on, more of like the author's voice and the way that they write. So that is the most fun part.
Yeah, for sure. And this talk about themes has made me think of we just had the nonfiction writer Melissa Febos at our campus, and she had a quote in one of her talks where she said, "Themes are for readers, not for writers." Um,
Mm.
and I thought that was really interesting, and because it is something where like we grow up in English class with theme, and then but really when you get to higher level writing classes, it's not necessarily on the creative side, not necessarily something you're talking about explicitly. Um,
Mhm.
and so I love the idea that we might even be surprising the writers of these stories with the books that we choose.
Yeah.
Right.
Because there's always, I mean, like, even with symbolism, with theme, like, there's always something in a book that wasn't as intentional as it seems. And I love the idea
Yeah.
that these authors that we've been asking for permission to read their stories are going to, like, maybe listen to the episode and hear something that
Mhm.
they didn't expect someone to pick out of their book. And that's so fun to be a part of that.
I
I
love
think it's
that.
so fun. It's so fun. It's so fun. Yeah, it's so fun to talk about books.
Yes.
And I love that we get to do that here.
Yeah.
For the most part, I do that at school. And I try to motivate middle schoolers to read. And I find talking about books with them and getting them to talk about books is a pretty good motivator. Although, man, motivating my sixth graders to read is challenging me, right? Like with this end of the year because I did the reading race, right?
Yeah, tell us about
And
that.
so I read one book, and for every one book I read, they have to read 5 books. And then
Class.
as a class, yes. And
I love
then if I win, they don't get the prize. But if they win, and they beat me, they get to I give them a whole class period extra recess, which motivates one half of the class. And then I bring in pancakes. I have a pancake party that motivates the other half of the class. So so far, or what has happened, what has come out of this is sixth grade. I don't know. I like cannot get them to finish a book.
Huh.
I'm taunting them. Smack talk, like you guys are terrible at reading. You can't even read one book. Like, what are you doing? Um, Meanwhile, seventh grade just obliterating me. There's these girls that come up to me nearly daily with like 3 books that they've read since the last time they talked to me. And I'm like, how is this even possible? You guys have after school. This isn't like the kids that don't do anything either. These are the kids who are on like club soccer teams and are like going to tutoring or like hours of gymnastics. And they're like, yeah, these are the 3 books I read. And I'm like, when? When did you read these books?
Yes, it's the trend on Instagram and probably on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok, so I see the trends like belatedly on Instagram. But with the Tony Stark did this in a cave, comparing, have you seen these?
Scraps.
Yeah, and it's comparing like what you could do as a 13-year-old with what you can do as a 23-year-old, and it's like,
Yep.
yes,
So
why?
relatable.
Where did it
Oh
go?
my
I
goodness.
freaking read these in a week. This whole time.
Oh my gosh, I think I look back to like I read Stephanie Meyer's The Host, which is like 900 pages in like less than a week. And now I'm like, when will I find the time to read my 200-page book that
Right.
I'd like to read?
Absolutely
So
insane.
relatable. I don't know how they do it, but yeah, so it's been a hard balance too because
Yeah.
I sometimes I meter what I put on there, like, oh, if they're losing by a lot, I'll maybe wait to put the next book I read up there until they read another one. But the problem is with seventh grade so far ahead of me and sixth grade so far behind me, I'm like,
Yeah.
Because
do
you can't stop
I
one class from seeing what the other class sees on the rate.
exactly right? So at this point, I think sixth grade is just gonna lose. I don't know what else to say. I think they're gonna lose, but seventh grade's gonna win, and I guess that's cheaper for me. But
Fair.
it's hopefully they at least read one book each. That would be my goal. But I've throughout the year we did like book talks. I had them like get up in front of the classroom and just talk about a book. It's something we did in college. We would just um read a book in my adolescent lit or my children's lit class and just talk about it with the class. And it was a way I got a lot of books to read because it's cool to hear from other people what they're reading. And
Like
it's
an
very
informal
short,
book
very
report.
informal. Yeah. And so I just want them, that's one of my goals. That's like my philosophy, basically. The middle school English teacher is like, I want to build a love of reading with them. And so by sharing with their like friends, that's my hope is that they
Yeah.
so that they motivate each other to read too. So, well, every class is going to be different too. Clearly, every class is different. So, I don't know. They could stage a comeback. We'll see.
I love
This
that
race.
so much though. And like, so this semester I taught English 101 at my college campus. And the final project I had them do was a literacy narrative where I just asked them to pick 1 to 2 events in their lives as either a reader or a writer or both that had an impact and to track that impact and kind of make a personal essay. And then they were asked to do it in a multimodal format. So, like, some people made podcast episodes, some people made PowerPoint presentation. Some people like put pictures into their Word document. And I love it because like, I'm teaching them like how to write rhetorical analyses and how to do like field research reports. And then I get to be like, creative writing time. But so many of them pick former teachers and say this teacher made all the difference, or they say this is how I found the one book that taught me, oh, I can enjoy reading, like even if I'm not going to read everything, I can enjoy certain books. And it's so fun to read. And the first time I taught the class, that was their introductory project. And I'm loving it so much more now because I've like gotten to know these students over the course of the semester. And now it's like my little closeout of like, oh, look at them. I love it. I love hearing their stories.
That's so fun.
So cool.
Fun. I love that. I might steal that, honestly. Well, I don't know if the middle schoolers are ready for that, but I could do a version of it.
You could definitely do a version of it. And it's fun seeing, like, I don't know, I love the people who surprise me. Like, I feel like we never expect the boys to be good at like Canva or PowerPoint, and then like I literally have gotten like classroom example, wonderfully designed presentations from some of my male students, and I love it. I'm like, yes,
that's so great.
Do it. I know you can. So it's so fun. It's so fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I've had students like recreate old diaries and like, oh, it's so fun.
That's awesome.
Oh, I love that. I love that they get a chance to be creative.
Yeah.
Because it's so fun for them. Yeah. And it's so fun for like teaching side of it too.
Right.
To see something different.
Yeah. But speaking of all of this, I feel like we should share. We talked about what we've told other people to read. I feel like we should share what we're reading.
Yes, right, current reads. Let's do it.
So, Megan, you wanna start?
Absolutely. Okay, so we talked about Rebecca Searle and praised her as she deserves. She's fantastic. Since we were talking about in 5 years, I went to go back and reread her other book, One Italian Summer, just because I love her writing style. One Italian Summer is great also. I considered that as a recommendation for that same episode, but in 5 years just fit a lot better. I love the same themes of instead of female friendship, this is a mother-daughter relationship, and she uses a lot of magical realism. But also just, I don't know, the way she writes is a lot different than anything I've ever read. I'm sure there's some similarities with other authors somewhere, but just her way of writing these really impactful stories, but in a way that's soothing, is the way that I kind of feel about it. I don't know, I was just kind of craving another one of her books, and I've already read this one, so I'm rereading it, but I love it, and it's a great like summertime read because it's also Italy and gorgeous.
Yes. I would like to say whoever designs the covers of her books like does an amazing job. She's got a great cover designer. That one, In 5 Years,
the goals on In 5 Years, and like how it's
so beautiful,
gorgeous.
One Italian Summer, you walk into a bookstore, you see that, you gotta pick it up. It's beautiful. Yeah, it looks like you get to step into an Italian summer through that cover.
I love that her covers really match the feel of the books too, because I've read some books where like the cover is great and the story is great, but they just don't like quite match up.
Yeah.
But I love like I can picture things because this is the feel of it. This is a perfect representation of what this book is. Judge this book by its cover. It's great.
Yes, I always do. I always judge books by their cover.
I do too.
It's not a good cover. How can it be a good book?
As a graphic designer, I feel very passionately about good covers.
And you guys, I know this is like, we talk about books and this is a movie, but talking about stepping into an Italian summer, I don't know if you guys have seen the Pixar movie Luca.
Yes. So beautiful.
Thing ever.
That's kind of
cute too.
The town I picture in that book. Yeah. I don't know if you guys haven't read One Italian Summer.
No, not yet.
No, I haven't.
That's like the type of town I picture. She goes to this like, she's not going to like a touristy place. It's very like off the beaten path. secluded.
Yes.
Um,
I will always take more Luca-ish content, so I'll have to bump that up on my TBR.
I love that.
Also, it just made me want to like make really good homemade pasta. Have I ever made homemade pasta? No, but it really, really made me want to.
Oh, we should try that.
Describes
Books with good food in them.
beautiful food, right?
This is
Oh,
true.
that's the stuff. Should I go
Awesome.
next? You want to hear about my books?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just finished reading this one, Educated, which is a memoir. It's nonfiction. I do not often read nonfiction, but this one was recommended to me because I'm an educator. It was actually recommended to me by another a person from my college class, actually, a long time ago. And I finally got around to it because I got it at a thrift store and I picked it up, and it is so good. I could not put it down. So it's about a girl who her first time ever in a classroom is when she goes to college at the age of 17, because she grew up in a very conservative Mormon family in Idaho. So conservative to the point that she didn't go to school. Her father believed that the Illuminati was like in the government and wanted to keep her away from those things. And her mom was an herbalist, and so they didn't go to the doctor either. And so she wasn't exposed to a lot of things. Like, for example, when she goes to college, she doesn't recognize the word Holocaust. And so that gets her into a lot of trouble at first.
Oh my God.
When she's in the class. And so it was just a fascinating story of her life. And it's kind of about education, but it's kind of just about, I don't, it's just her storytelling method was just like gorgeous. Just I couldn't stop reading. It was just it was the story of her life, but the way she tells it was just perfect. And so this is like I gave this one 5 stars. This is one of my first times giving 5 stars to a book this year because it was really good. So also this is a great cover. Like, it's a pencil, but it's a girl on a mountain
I
because
know, I
her
love
family lived
that.
on a mountain. And
I just keep looking at it as you hold it up. I'm like, that's so
yes.
cool.
So that's what I just finished literally today. And then for the past couple weeks, I've been working on The Prisoner's Throne, which is the most recent book in the Cruel Prince series. There's a trilogy, and then the spin-off. This is the second book in the spin-off series. And I like this book better than The Stolen Heir, which is the first book in the spin-off. Because this one is from Oak's perspective, which is the main character from the first part's brother. So I just kind of like him better. So I've been enjoying this one a little bit more, and I'm almost done. You can see I only have this much left to read. Yeah, it's I don't love the spinoff as much as the original, but this one's definitely been more fun to read recently. So I'll let you know when I finish it how I feel about the end. And
Yeah.
Holly Black, fun time.
I just got Cruel Prince for Christmas.
Oh my goodness.
So
That book is so good. It is the original trilogy. Oh my goodness. They are amazing. I think
to read those.
Yeah, I got them there, but all the way at the top. But they're
Holly Black, who wrote The Coldest Girl in Cold Town, which I feel like, Holly Black gets talked about, but I feel like this book never does. And it's a standalone, and it's fascinating. It's on my favorites list. It is a world where it's set in our world kind of, but it's like vampires have become a thing, but vampirism is treated as a disease. So like quarantine towns are established for people who are vampires, but you also and like curfews are established and all this different stuff. But there are also like this new subsect of people who want to be vampires. So like you get people like moving to the quarantine towns trying to get bit and like different stuff.
Interesting.
And then there's like, it's not a one-to-one of like you get bit, you become a vampire. There are like healing methods that can be used. So like it's just very interesting, and it's so unique, which like I feel like doesn't get said a lot about vampire stuff. Like I love me a good vampire series, but this is one that I'm like there's no connection to like anything else. So yeah, would recommend. That's on my reread list because I read it so long ago, but I loved it.
I love that.
Currently,
Yes, Allison,
I
tell us what you are reading.
oh boy, so I am late to the game, but I am being introduced to the Sarah J. Maas universe. So I'm
It's a big
on
universe.
book 2. Oh, it's a universe, Megan.
Uh-huh.
Because I've been told, so like basically, I've been being told to read A Court of Thorns and Roses for years at this point. And what's really fun, but also like so hard to keep track in my mind, is I've got like I feel like I have like 5 different friends who I'm supposed to keep be giving progress updates to. And every single one of them then like before they can react, they're like, okay, wait, remind me exactly where you are so that I don't spoil anything. And like so it's very entertaining, and I love how much like love there is for the series. It takes me back to like middle school when I was reading like the Hunger Games Divergent and like that fandom was happening. But yeah, book 2, I'm like a third of the way in, which, for a Sarah J. Maas book is 180 pages in. And yeah, what do I want to say? What is not a spoiler? It's my understanding the first book was written as, it could be a standalone if a publisher didn't pick up a series. Like it was meant to give a satisfying ending. And it does. And then this comes in and complicates everything.
Yes, it does.
And my little heart is just like opinions are being pushed. It makes me want to go reread the first book because I'm like, what was I missing? Because I know she's planting seeds. I know that this was the plan. And so there's like red flags that I'm like, I should have seen those earlier.
Yep.
But I missed them. But it also feels like I'm going on the journey with Feyre because I'm seeing them as she sees them, which I feel like is a very rare thing to write a character, especially a relationship, where you don't see the red flags until the main character sees the red flags for themselves.
Yeah, that is cool.
It's very cool. It's kind of like what happens with It Ends With Us. Like that's a book where like you truly experience like, oh crap, like I'm feeling things I don't expect to feel. And yeah, so yeah, it's fun. But yeah, I've been told that the train does not stop for like 16 books. So the plan is to finish the Court of Thorns and Roses series, and then I'm supposed to read the Throne of Glass series, which apparently she is going to be tying together in the future. And then
what?
Yeah.
Tying them together?
So apparently this series isn't done. And apparently
I did know that.
It's going to come out somehow. I don't know if she's doing it in this or if like somehow Crescent City's involved, but I've been told it's going to be shown that this is one universe, like an MCU type thing.
Interesting. I guess I have only read, so I've read all of A Court of Thorns and Roses up to what is out. And then I have read the first 3 books of Throne of Glass. And the reason I've only read the first 3 is because they don't have the rest available from our library as audiobooks. So, but I have the other books and I'll probably get to them eventually.
Yeah.
And I guess I can kind of see the crossover, but they're such different worlds. But maybe it's because I've only read the first 3 Throne of Glass.
I'm so like I've only got my toe in. I have no idea, but like I'm fascinated to know this is like in the works. So especially because Throne of Glass was her debut, is my understanding, and so it's like this is like, was this always the plan? Is this something she's gonna like manage to weave after the fact? Because it's not like I'm wondering if it's gonna feel kind of like Cassandra Clare Shadowhunters-esque, but also like Shadowhunters that was always like they were always billed as connected. So it's really interesting to me that she's like gonna surprise readers.
Yeah,
I'm fascinated.
Well, and with like them saying that preemptively,
Mhm.
it sounds like it's gonna be like a big deal that they're connected, rather than like, I know you haven't read all the Emily Henry books, but she references Beach Read, or the characters in Beach Read in each
Okay.
of the other books, as if
Okay.
they're
It's a,
first.
it's a little easier because those books do take place in the real
Right,
world.
the real world. But I was like, while you were saying this, I'm like, I wonder if it'd be something like that. But with like hyping it up before it happens, it sounds like it's gonna be like actually.
I don't know. I've heard that
I
if
don't
you're
know.
really paying attention, I don't remember which series it's in, but I've heard from people who are farther in, who have read everything, that if you're really paying attention, there's some Easter eggs already.
Okay.
But I've heard they're hard to catch.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Oh, I would
But
not.
really,
Probably just like mention similar things or something like that
right.
in
Or like,
conversation.
these
Yeah.
are like the kind of fantasy books that have maps in the front. So for all I know, she's like mentioning a
Oh.
city that's on the map
Oh,
that like
yeah.
I have no idea what these Easter eggs are.
Yeah.
I read
But-
Court of Mist and Fury, and then the next one really close together. Is it a Court of Mist and Fury, and then the next one, like the pink one,
The next one's the
and
pink
then
one. I
the
don't
gray
remember.
one?
No,
Or
there's
is there one in
in
between?
between.
Oh, a
that-
little short one?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That one is like not really one of the novels. It's like,
Yeah.
it's almost like a novella, especially compared to the other ones.
Right. It's like a novella,
Um,
but for Sarah J. Maas, it's like 200 pages.
Right, exactly. So, okay, so I do know kind of what happens individually in each book. It's they kind of, when you read a series so close together, they kind of
Right, right.
Yeah.
So I don't think even if there are references in like Throne of Glass later, I feel like I would not pick them up. It's just
I have no idea.
too smushed in my brain.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
haven't
so
read these books, but I kind of feel like I want to now, because this reminds me of being like a Swiftie
Yes.
and like interconnecting things.
Yes. It feels
I
like
love interconnecting.
Swiftie, Marvel Cinematic Universe, like, and I'm ready.
Everything connects.
Yes. Everything.
Everything connects.
But yeah,
Yes.
hop on the train with me. I'm only one book in. You can we can go through this together. But yeah.
Comparatively, Court of Thorns and Roses is much shorter than the other one, so she's not even that far in, Megan.
I'm
I've
not.
been in a little bit of like a book slump. Maybe I need like a good.
They are good for getting out of a book slump.
Yes.
But yeah, so I feel like for our next like 3 book club episodes, my answer is Sarah J. Maas book. So we'll see what happens.
I hope the listeners enjoy your journey through this series.
I know. So hope you'll probably be like expecting certain reactions. They're probably all ahead of me on the trek, but yeah. But this has been so fun.
I know. What a fun book club. Who else would I rather want to have a book club with,
Yes. But yeah, and I'm so excited to do this again in 4 episodes. So
Me
Do
too.
it in
coming
person.
up. What?
Oh, maybe an
Do we get to do it
in-person.
Ooh,
would be
yeah, that would be fun. I hope
Mhm.
so. That would be
Eventually, at least.
yes. And I know
Yes.
coming up, we have, I lost my spot. We have some Poe stories, some Edgar Allan
Edgar
Poe
Allan
coming
Poe.
up. Some
Something
villain
spooky
stories.
again.
Yeah, so we got fun things coming your way. So stay tuned, and Teresa, wrap us up.
All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Listen Now, Read Later. You can follow us on Instagram for fun extras and updates on our next episode. And now that you've listened to our recommendations, it's time for you to go read your books, because I know you have a lot to do right now. And we'll catch you when you listen later.